So that said, let's just say that I really embrace this mentality and I accept that no matter what I'm looking at myself, that everyone is in fact just one being and that we're all interacting with ourselves. Why is my neighbor George such a selfish asshole? And why does it hurt my feelings so much?
So because we are this is fun, you asking me these things. I know everyone's gonna enjoy this episode a lot. But why is George such a selfish asshole and why do you feel bad? Because it's almost there's a lot of different things that create that type of situation. But George is very invested in his idea of himself. Just because you may recognize that you are them doesn't mean that they're going to recognize themselves in you. And there's no way to convince them of that. It has to come from them. You can drop seeds, you can say things, but communication, especially this communication, because of the amount of things we have invested in as a society, is always going to be a two-way street. I've had a number of conversations with people who are very smart. They're willing to take this to a point, and then they butt up against something they're very invested in. And so there's pushback at that point, and there's a willingness to let go of your ability to take them all the way because they have to be willing to do that themselves. So anyway, with your buddy George there, it's his investment in the illusion that's creating that. We're now existing in a society that has not tended to the garden for a very long time. We've gotten very caught in that. And the reason that you feel bad when he acts that way is because you believe that it means something about you, which it doesn't. And we take that concern very seriously. And I'm not saying it's necessarily an easy thing to do, but there's a lot of certainty that's settled upon in that situation. Your idea of George being something separate from you, and then anything he expresses means something about you as opposed to recognizing that it's coming from within him. People are trying to feel better, and we're confused on how to actually do that. And so we use every which way we can come up with to try and create a cessation of the suffering we're experiencing. And people being assholes and dicks and pieces of shit is just an iteration of exploring the infinite potential ways that you can try and deal with that experience.
So, what you're saying, or at least what I'm taking away from this, is that George is just wrapped up in himself and he's not necessarily focused on me, but rather dealing with his own shit, and I'm a convenient outlet. And from my perspective, I don't have to look at it like George's cat who keeps shitting in my bushes is doing so because George hates me. I don't necessarily have to give it a narrative and think that that's the case because I'm thinking about myself, right? I'm worried about somebody not liking me. I'm assuming I've done something wrong. So that's really interesting. And then you went a little deeper there, and I'd like to back up for just one second because